Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Mile Higher. This is episode 322, and as you can see if you're watching, I'm all alone up here today. This week was a bit of a hard week for Kendall and I. Actually, we had a death in the family, which is why Kendall's not here today, and I've been battling a nasty cold the last couple of days. Almost didn't make it to recording today, but I was like, I gotta push through. I gotta be here for y'all and keep the show going. So I am here. I'm not completely alone though, because I've got Ian and Janelle here, of course.
Hello.
And we've got a very, very wild yet disturbing case that we're gonna be covering today on the Halderson family. And man, we're gonna be talking about a missing couple that ends up being found murdered, and a son who spins a web of lies unlike anything I think any of us have ever heard of before or seen. I mean, this is absolutely insane. What unfolds here? I mean, it is on a whole other level. There's really no other way to describe it. I mean, it's almost so crazy you can't even believe that everything happened the way that it did. But yeah, this forewarning, this case is very disturbing, but there is a lot of different elements to it that I think just make it absolutely insane. So buckle up and come on the ride with us today. Appreciate you being here, and I apologize if I sound a little nasally. I'm doing the best I can here. Pump my nose with all sorts of different things this morning. Try to keep it as clear as possible. But yeah, let's just go ahead and dive into things. I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's go ahead and start by talking about the Halderson family, and specifically Bart and Krista Halderson. So Bart and Krista Halderson were born on May 14th, 1971 and January 25th, 1968, respectively. And Bart, he grew up in Sheboygan, a small city north of Milwaukee along Lake Michigan, while Krista grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. While Krista was a little older than Bart, the two attended the University of Wisconsin in Madison together, and that's where they met. And then they fell quickly in love with one another. Really a sweet story. And they were noted for going to UW Badgers games. I mean, football is a big deal in Wisconsin. And this was a tradition that they kept even after graduation. Krista's family was very close, and Bart was quickly included in family activities with Krista and her sisters. And one of their favorite activities was going to Krista's family cabin, which was 3 hours north of Madison in the Upper Peninsula. Krista's family had built the cabin themselves back in the 1940s and had become a family heirloom. So it was just a property that the family had had for many, many years. I think it was her grandparents that actually built it. And so almost yearly, they would travel to the cabin for major holidays like Christmas, Thanksgiving, and most notably the 4th of July. Bart and Krista's lifestyles meshed very well. They liked to have fun in town and were very involved in their community, but neither wanted to party like that, even in college. Neither were heavy drinkers and preferred quiet family activities over the big parties at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is very famous for throwing some wild parties over there. Both of them earned their bachelor's degrees and got jobs in Madison, and Bart worked as an accountant for BDO, which is a retail banking organization, and Krista was an administrative assistant for Zimbrick Automotive, which is the largest car dealership in Wisconsin. Then in 1994, Bart and Krista officially got married, and they settled in DeForest, which is a small suburb just north of Madison. DeForest and Windsor are known for their beautiful ponds, forested areas, and swimming along rivers that lead to Lake Mendota. They then started their small family shortly after with their first son, Mitchell, who was born in 1996 or 1997. We're not entirely sure because we weren't able to find his birth date. And their youngest son, Chandler, was born on March 15th, 1998. So they had two boys born 1 or 2 years apart. And Bart and Krista, by all accounts from other family members, were very active in their son's life. They absolutely adored their sons. They were very, very proud parents. Both of their boys were involved in Boy Scouts growing up. I was as well. I think it's a great activity for young boys to be a part of. You learn a lot of great skills, and Bart was very involved with that as well, was a scout leader. And Chandler at least reached the rank of Eagle Scout. We're not sure about Mitchell, but Eagle Scout, that's a big achievement in Boy Scouts. The family was very active in Boy Scouts and several other organizations, including Kiwanis and the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Their family situation was very ideal for a long time. Bart enjoyed home remodeling, woodworking, and Krista loved interior decorating. And their house in DeForest was 3 stories with a basement finished mainly by Bart and an unfinished storage area. They had a beautiful pond in their backyard, and Chandler would often take his friends and family to a secret swimming spot on the nearby Wisconsin River. Chandler was also very active in high school, placing at various swim meets on the Plymouth High School swim team. And in a high school interview while he was on the swim team, he said his favorite movie was Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and his favorite sports team was, of course, the University of Wisconsin Badgers, just like his parents. And like I mentioned before, Bart and Krista absolutely adored their 2 sons. They were very proud of them, and both seemed successful and outgoing from a young age. They had a lot of friends, and they both had bright futures ahead of them. Mitchell graduated from college and landed a high-paying tech job at Epic Systems. Chandler, after graduating high school, took a year off, but started attending the Madison Area Technical College, or MATC, in 2018. He then moved out of the family home and reported back to his parents that he was doing exceptionally well. And in 2019, he was on track to graduate with an IT degree, and he had already earned a certificate in solar energy. However, due to the pandemic in 2020, Chandler decided to move back into his parents' home in DeForest, where things started to change. Now, both Chandler and Mitchell became involved in long-term relationships around this time, and Chandler started dating a woman named Cat Mellender in 2019, and the two spent most days either seeing one another, speaking over FaceTime, or sending pictures via Snapchat. However, early on in their relationship, Chandler was caught cheating on Cat with a mutual friend. And while the two didn't break up, Chandler agreed to share his location with Cat over Snapchat because she basically grilled him and was like, and he's denying that he's having this, he's cheating on her. But she was like, well, going forward, if we're going to be together, I need to see where your location is. So he agreed to turn on his location in Snapchat. So if you're not familiar with Snapchat, I know not all of us use Snapchat anymore, but basically you just allow the Snapchat app to access your location and share it, and it will update your avatar to wherever you last opened Snapchat. So this is not like Find My Friends or Life 360 where you can follow someone's activity live as they move around on the map. You can only see the last location they were once they open the app. But despite their early troubles in the relationship, Cat was quickly involved in the Halderson family. Mitchell had proposed to his girlfriend in either 2020 or 2021, and Krista wanted to take her and Cat on a girls' trip to Disney World to celebrate, which that right there says a lot about Krista and really Mitchell and Chandler's parents. I don't know that many parents that would do something like that, like take their, still very young relationships. Obviously, Mitchell's engaged at this point, but go on a girls' trip to Disney World together, like that's pretty cool. So Cat spent many nights at the Halderson family home and became very close with Bart and Krista. They'd spent a lot of time together. They have game nights with Mitchell and even joined them on family trips up north to their family's cabin. Over time, Cat really became close with both Krista and Bart. She even texted Krista just about her life and what was going on. And Bart often shared fishing tips when Cat would visit Chandler at the family house. On the other hand, Chandler was welcomed into Cat's family too. While Cat's mother, Dulce, lived nearby in another Madison suburb, she was romantically involved with a woman named Crescent Lasai, who lived on a large farm property in the rural area of Cottage Grove. And she lived there with her brother and her 94-year-old father. Chandler became close with all of them. While Cat worked in healthcare and had an apartment of her own, she'd often spend nights at her mother's house or Cress's farm, and Chandler would often join her there. In fact, the only times Chandler couldn't hang out with Cat were when he was busy with school, which his parents thought he was doing really well in. He'd also spend full days in his room studying and writing, only taking a break to play some games online. Chandler's favorite video game was Escape from Tarkov, which this will be a pretty important detail later on in this case. But if you're not familiar with this video game, it's a realistic military simulator in which, squads drop in on a map and scavenge for weapons and loot, and they face off against other players and NPCs. And, there's quests and missions and things like that. But his favorite weapon in the game was an SKS, which is a semi-automatic assault-style rifle. He became pretty obsessed with obtaining this rifle because it's, there's all this different types of loot and achievements within the game. And to sort of become better at the game, you've got to acquire better items. So you got to put a lot of time into this game in order to really become good at it, right? And get some of the better loot. And because of the nature of the game, it attracts many military service members, which is how Chandler ended up meeting his best friend, Andrew Smith, who lived in Kansas but was stationed in Germany. The two met online in 2020, and despite the fact that they had yet to meet in person, they spoke almost every day while they played video games together, which on first glance, this is not all that, unordinary. Like tons of people have friends that they play games with online that they've never met in person. So nothing to raise an eyebrow at right now, but this again will be important later on. But in 2021, Bart and Krista started to become concerned for Chandler. He was spending all of his time studying, hanging out with Cat, or playing video games with Andrew. And while they were happy that their son was taking his education seriously, they were getting tired of financially supporting Chandler for everything. And they requested that he get his part-time job and pay a small amount of rent every month, which is really not that big of a deal, honestly. Like they've been supporting him and they're still going to let him stay there. He's going to pay far less rent if he stays with his parents, but they're trying to kind of nudge him out the door, right? It's time to be an adult. They've got Mitchell who is doing exactly that. And so, come on, Chandler, it's time to get with it here. But Chandler got lucky. In January 2021, he got a high-paying internship through MATC with American Family Insurance. His parents were very happy and proud when they found out about this because now both of their sons had found high-paying jobs in their fields and seemed to be doing very, very well. Chandler also said he started volunteering with the Dane County Sheriff's dive team on the weekends. He was on call for water rescues with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources when he wasn't working, studying, or playing video games. But then there was another problem. Chandler was months into his internship, working almost every day, and somehow he was still broke. He would ask his parents to cover food, clothes, and video game expenses. He would ask Kat, who worked full-time, for money to cover his small amount of rent, and sometimes he would even go to her mother. So something's really not adding up here, right? Bart and Krista confronted Chandler about his lack of funds because they're like, this just doesn't make any sense. You're saying you've got this job at American Family Insurance. Based on what you've told us, you should be making enough money to easily pay us the rent that you owe us and pay for all of your other expenses, which really isn't that much at this point, right? So it's like, okay, there's got to be more to the story here. So they confronted him about this lack of funds, and Chandler explained that there had been a problem with American Family Insurance's third-party pay stubs. Which, come on, his parents aren't idiots. Like there are obviously very well educated. I mean, Bart is an accountant with nearly 30 years of experience. So he's like, okay, something's fishy about this. Let me reach out to American Family Insurance and figure out what's going on. So Chandler, gives him his representative over there, and he gives him an email address. And what's interesting about this is the email address, the domain for it is an @protonmail.com instead of at americanfamilyinsurance.com or afi.com or something like that. And I think, at this point, Bart doesn't have any reason to not believe Chandler or believe that this is a legit person that he's emailing. I mean, I'm sure in hindsight, he'd be like, okay, that is kind of strange, Why would they have a Proton Mail? And if you're not familiar with Proton Mail, it is a fully encrypted email provider. So basically people use it for a lot of different reasons, but a lot of people use it for nefarious reasons because there's supposed to be less of a possibility of anything being traced back to that account because everything's encrypted. It's supposed to be one of the most secure mail providers. So just keep that in mind. In the email exchanges between Bart and the contact, he learned that Chandler was a salaried employee, but had been mistakenly listed as hourly, which that right there is like red flag. What the hell?
Well, how does how does an insurance company mess up that badly?
Right, right.
Especially with an intern who, again, like you said, Bart has no reason to believe he's lying because Chandler's spending all his time making slideshows and presentation decks for his job. So Bart's like, wait, they're this organized that he's working every day, and yet they messed up how they listed him on his 1099?
He's a little suspicious, but more so at the insurance company. Like, who's running the payroll over there? Because what the hell, this makes no sense. I know I've said this a million times on the show, but I'm a huge animal lover. We have 10 pets at home. I have 3 cats that I absolutely love and adore, and I've had for a number of years now. They're starting to get up there in age, and so their health is really important, as they get in those senior years. And that's why I love Smalls. So this podcast is sponsored by Smalls, and if you're a listener of the show, you know that my cats absolutely love Smalls, and at this point, it's a must-have. I have got to make sure I never run out because they're very picky. If you have cats, you know the different qualities of cat food out there. A lot of the canned food is pretty disgusting. You open the can and you can smell it across the house almost. With Smalls, though, it really doesn't smell bad at all. And it doesn't look disgusting either. It honestly just looks like ground meat that you would eat yourself. And so my cats love that it's fresh, it's protein packed, and they always clean the bowl every time I put it down for them. They have a bunch of different blends, depending on what your cats like. If they like, chicken, poultry, or if they like fish, they've got you covered no matter what palate your cat has. So that's great. My cats are eating better than ever thanks to Smalls, and they look forward to it. They know when feeding time is. They'll come and find me. Another reason I love Smalls is that they work with the Humane Society, and they've actually donated over $1 million worth of food to help cats through the Humane Society. And they even give you a chance to donate at checkout. And after switching to Smalls, 88% of cat owners reported overall health improvements, which is a big deal. Really, really happy with the results that Smalls has given my cats. So give your cat the gift of great cat food this holiday season. Head to smalls.com/milehigher and use promo code milehigher at checkout for 50% off your first order plus free shipping. That's the best offer you'll find, but you have to use our code milehigher for 50% off your first order. One last time, that's promo code milehigher for 50% off your first order plus free shipping. So Bart goes and tries to clear up the mistake. And so he's emailing this AFI contact, and they tell him that the third-party payroll company couldn't authorize a payout to Chandler because the amount was too high, which that's very odd and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And so Bart would stay in contact with this person, attempting to clear up the situation until Chandler's internship with American Family Insurance ended in mid-2021. At this point, Bart and Krista are pretty frustrated with Chandler's financial situation and apparent bad luck, so they cut him off from receiving any other money that wasn't essential. They're not going to give him money for his video games anymore, obviously. So the deal was that they'd still let him live in the house and buy groceries, but refused to just give him disposable cash until he got another job, which is, again, very fair. So Chandler turned to Cat, who again worked full-time in healthcare to pay for his rent to his parents and even money for coffee and fast food. Eventually, Cat got fed up with his behavior as well, and, he had promised her over and over again that he wanted to take care of her, and he would do this once he graduated. But school for Chandler was just dragging on, and his high-paying internship still hadn't paid him by May 2021. So it's like, okay, something's just not adding up here. But Chandler's bad luck seemed to turn around finally later that month when he told Cat and his parents that he was in the final round of interviews for a job at SpaceX in Florida. Which is like, how do we go from an internship at American Family Insurance to now he somehow is potentially in the running for a job at SpaceX, which I think pretty much everybody knows, like, it's a very competitive company to get into, right? Like, it's not just I'll throw an application in and hopefully I'll get in. Like, it's a very stringent process, and it just doesn't really make sense for him. But again, they're thrilled for him. They're like, he's a smart guy. He's been studying for this IT degree, and who are we to say that maybe he didn't get lucky here? So the plan was that he'd start part-time until he graduated from MATC and then transition to full-time work. And just like that, poof, he got the job. And he was supposed to start training remotely on June 11th and then move to Florida on June 15th. And Kat, when she hears this news, she's like, yes, finally, like, our life is starting to unfold. We're going to be able to go move and really start our life together. Chandler's going to be able to support himself, help support me. And so it seemed like, they had everything good going for themselves. He also said that his salary at SpaceX was going to be around $80,000, and she could move with him and promised that she could, quote, decorate the house however she wanted. So really selling her on this sort of dream scenario that he has somehow landed. The two FaceTimed throughout May and looked at condos together, and they finally settled on one in Titusville. Chandler said he signed the lease and even purchased a car in Florida. Chandler would move there first, and then Cat would join him once her lease was up in Madison. And so Cat told everyone, friends and family, and even alerted her job that she would be leaving at the end of the summer to move with Chandler to Florida. But then, as seems to be often the case with Chandler, he had a string of bad luck. First, his brother Mitchell went to the hospital because he had an unusually high blood sugar levels and needed to be monitored by hospital staff. And Chandler told Cat that he spoke with SpaceX and said it would be okay if he waited until July to move to Florida and wait until his brother was out of the hospital. Cat then went to urgent care. While she was okay the next day, Chandler said he wouldn't move away until she and his brother were confirmed to be okay and got a good bill of health. Earlier in the year, though, Chandler's best friend, if you remember, Andrew Smith, the guy he plays video games with online, was in an accident in Germany and sustained a pretty severe head injury. He was then discharged from the army and returned to live with his wife in Kansas. And it was during this time that their video game tendencies picked up, and Andrew said that he and Chandler played Escape from Tarkov, quote, every single day. And this is one of those video games that it's very easy to sink in, thousands of hours, especially if you have somebody to play with. I'm sure it's that much more addicting. And so this really became like a full-blown addiction for him. Like he was like, had to play this for hours and hours and hours every single day. And he loved playing with Andrew Smith because Andrew, who's ex-military, he was also a firearms enthusiast. During this time back home, Andrew went and purchased an SKS rifle as it was his and Chandler's favorite gun in the game. Andrew bought the weapon and 500 rounds of 7.62 ammunition for it. And since Andrew was such an avid firearms collector and he had many different types of weapons with different calibers, to differentiate the ammunition, he stored it in ammo cans, which he used as a custom stencil to decal. So after receiving the SKS, Andrew took it to a firing range to test it out. And even though he's really just a collector, Andrew often sold the guns that he didn't think were practical for personal use or home protection. And so while he really, kind of liked the SKS at first, after he started firing it, he started realizing, I don't really like the gun. The kickback in the larger caliber made it, a little bit more difficult to use in like a home defense type scenario because it's a freaking assault rifle. Those types of guns are meant for long range. The bullets can travel very, very far. So really not practical. But I think it was really Andrew he loved guns, gun enthusiast. He also loved to build them out. He'd buy a gun, he'd add a bunch of attachments to it, and then he would try and go and sell it. So that was something that he kind of did on the side.
It's like you said, it is larger. It is a heavier caliber. It's basically a semi-automatic AK-47. Like this was designed solely for military use. You can purchase it for, as a citizen because it is not like fully automatic and the mags don't carry that much. But again, like even if Andrew would purchase a weapon like an AR-15 and then build it out because he wanted it to be super cool, at a certain point, it would just kind of sit in his gun locker for a long time and be like, I don't really want this. And then he would end up selling it or giving it to a friend.
Right. Which I think is pretty common. I think there's a lot of people that do that just collect them or come across a gun that they really want. They buy it and then shoot it a few times and then it sits in a safe for a while until they decide what to do with it next. But so Andrew decided after some time that he wanted to give this SKS away. And he said, quote, he wanted to give it to someone that would appreciate this weapon and take care of it. And since Chandler and he had used it in Tarkov just about every day, he thought he would be the perfect person to receive this gift, which is a pretty nice gift because this gun is not cheap. It's not a couple $100. This is a few $1,000s. It's not a cheap or easily obtainable gun. So it's a really nice gift to give to somebody. So one weekend in June 2021, after Mitchell and Cat's health scares were over, Andrew took off work and drove 10 hours from Kansas to Madison, Wisconsin in order to go and meet Chandler in real life for the first time. While Andrew was in town for just 2 days, because I think he did this over a weekend, Chandler introduced Andrew to his family, took him around town, and hung out with him and Cat at Chandler's secret swimming spot on the Wisconsin River. During their time together, Andrew also talked to Chandler about the issues he had been having since his head injury he had sustained, including foggy memories, migraines, tingles in the legs, and just the inability to work. Andrew said that Chandler, quote, smiled when he gave him the SKS along with 3 empty magazines, the custom stenciled ammo can, and 480 rounds of ammunition, 20 missing from the only time Andrew took it to the firing range. And while the two didn't fire the SKS while Andrew was in town, Chandler signed documents that showed that he was now the legal owner of this firearm, and Andrew loaded one of the 3 magazines to show Chandler how to use it. When Andrew left, Chandler hid the weapon in the unfinished part of the basement, sticking the magazines inside the walls and keeping the ammo can in his closet. But unfortunately, once again, Chandler faced even more bad luck, because he took a fall down the stairs at home and smacked his head on the wall. And he told his parents that his injury felt severe, so they rushed him to the hospital. While the ER doctor said that he might have had just a mild concussion, Chandler's fall wasn't nearly as severe as his parents feared. But Chandler still complained about having migraines and tingling feelings in his legs, which was very kind of convenient and very similar to how Andrew had felt after he was in a car accident in Germany. Chandler scheduled a follow-up appointment with a new doctor, and after that appointment, Chandler told everyone that the fall was actually very serious. Apparently, he had sustained a hematoma, would suffer from migraines for the rest of his life, faced possible paralysis, and might even have to use a colostomy bag, which that's a big escalation in injuries. That's serious injuries.
We're going from like, you might have a mild concussion, don't take a nap for the rest of the day, to you need to have a colostomy bag and you might need to use a wheelchair.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
So it's like he goes and gets a second opinion, essentially. And whoever he goes and sees, this doctor supposedly tells him he has all these injuries, which I'm pretty sure if you have a hematoma, you need like surgery. They got to like take another look at that and make sure that, you know, you're not having all this brain bleeding going on and alleviate pressure to the brain. But apparently they give him this diagnosis and he's just allowed to return home.
That's what I was going to say. If the doctor's like, hi, you might become paralyzed, have a good day. Like,
yeah, no.
That's insane. You would, if you're going to go home, you'd be on like bed rest, heavy watch. You'd probably have tons of follow-up appointments, testing scheduled. And also, why did it take 2 doctors to figure out all of this?
Yeah. And again, he went to the ER
right.
the first time. The ERs are pretty thorough when diagnosing medical conditions. And they diagnosed him again with a mild concussion. So how do we then go? Which again is not to say that maybe something developed, maybe they missed something. But then again, he probably would have been hospitalized. Parents would have been, called back in. But no, none of that happened. He just comes home and is like, yeah, actually the injury is more severe. And let's remember, he wasn't in a car accident. He took a fall down the stairs,
which as we
hit his
discussed,
head on, which can happen.
Really terrible.
Right.
And, deadly, but he seemed okay enough to leave.
Yeah, and the only thing that this new doctor has him do is wear a neck brace.
Yeah.
Which you can just buy a neck brace
at Walgreens.
At Walmart, Walgreens, medical supply store, but apparently that's all the doctor wanted him to do, is just wear a neck brace for a while, and hopefully these issues would clear up. And there's actually pictures of Chandler with Mitchell and his father Bart from Father's Day in 2021, and you can clearly see he's wearing a neck brace, which again, keep this in mind as we go forward. There was also something else troubling the family. Since April 2021, Bart had been attempting to get a copy of Chandler's transcripts for tax purposes. First, Chandler put Bart in contact with Alyssa Brandt, a representative from MATC, his college, who happened to use a Gmail address. Bart sent off the $8 processing fee and received nothing in return. And what was also strange is that Alyssa's emails were filled with misspellings, including her own name, which she spelled Brandt, B-R-A-N-T, and B-R-A-N-D-T. So inconsistent spelling of their own name. Very weird. And again, Bart is going and asking his son, not thinking anything is up, right? And it's just like, hey, who's your contact at MATC? I want to email them. So Chandler gives him this email address. Frustrated, Bart asked Chandler if he had a counselor or an enrollment officer he could speak to, because he's obviously getting a little suspicious of these emails to Alyssa. He's like, okay, something's not right here. Give me a different person to contact. Chandler then proceeds to give his father Daniel Spieth's email address, which was another Gmail address. And Chandler said that Mr. Spieth was a counselor at MATC. Bart once again sent off the processing fee again and still received nothing. Bart requested Daniel's phone number in order to set up a proper call with this college official. In an email sent after the phone call with Daniel Spieth, Bart noted that he, quote, sounded a lot like Chandler. So you see where this is going now. And after months of correspondence with Daniel Spieth, Alyssa Brandt, and another college official named Aaron Hoover, who also just happened to use a Gmail account, which we all know if you've ever been in college anywhere, really any school, they don't use Gmail addresses.
No.
Unless it's a very sketchy school. But no, most colleges have enough money to have a custom domain registered email. So again, very, very weird, very suspicious. But at this point, he's conversing back and forth. He even talked to Daniel on the phone. He's getting very frustrated because he's not getting anywhere with them. The ball keeps getting dropped, is really how Bart describes it. He's like, I don't understand why this is so hard. This would be easy. You know, he knows this process is not that hard.
It's insanely simple to request for transcripts. And not only that, I mean, even though it's not that much money, but Bart has sent off money now, $8 a pop to get the transcript. Like there usually is never an issue with receiving a transcript, especially after you pay the $8.
Right. And again, it's interesting that he's continuing to go to Chandler for the contacts. And I'm sure we'd all love to know why he didn't just go straight to the university or just drive over there and like walk in, straight away after dealing with Alyssa. But again, I think at this point, he still has no reason to believe that his son could possibly be lying to him.
At this point, it looks like the school's just a bunch
shitty.
of dumbasses.
Right.
There's no reason to believe that Chandler has any sneaky activity going on. And who knows? I mean, Chandler could have, maybe Bart was like, hey, let's go to the school. And he was like, no, like here, send this email to this person. They've been responsive, and who knows what was really going on between the two of them behind the scenes.
Right. And I think too, this really just shows me how manipulative Chandler is. Like he is so good at spinning lies, as we'll find out, that he knows how to manipulate people on a whole other level. And so he is convincing his father that no, MATC, I don't know what their problem is. Like these are the people that I deal with. So I don't know what's going on here. So at this point, Bart's pretty suspicious of Chandler, and he's like, all right, he's clearly something's up. He doesn't want me to know what's really going on. So Bart calls up MATC, the college, and this time he poses as Chandler. And on June 30th, 2021, he speaks to someone in the enrollment department named Omar Job. And Bart was frustrated with the college at the beginning of the call, and he actually kind of took it out on Omar because he's like, what the hell? Why'd this take so long to get a hold of somebody? I've been conversing back and forth with people over email. But Omar calmly explained that it shouldn't have been this hard for him to access his transcripts. Again, he's posing as Chandler. So Bart gave him Chandler's name, and Omar said that he couldn't access the transcripts because he had a balance of over $2,000 on his account. Bart was pretty surprised by hearing this, and again, Chandler had never mentioned anything about a balance or issues with the school or, payment or anything like that. Nor had the three, MATC representatives he had spoken with before for the past couple of months. None of them had mentioned this either. So Bart asked if he could set up an appointment to pay for the balance, to which Omar responded that it wouldn't be a problem if he just came in or even paid it over the phone. Then, whether following a hunch or he was just genuinely curious, Bart asked Omar if he could access an unofficial transcript while on the phone. And Omar said that while Chandler was a student at MATC, he wasn't full-time, which is likely why he had a balance on his account. Financial aid scholarships are usually contingent on full-time enrollment. So, he owed some money. Then Bart asked if Chandler was still on track to graduate in the IT program, To which Omar said that while he had taken some IT classes in 2018, he wasn't actually enrolled in a program at all. Bart then asked, because Bart's like, okay, what the hell? He's starting to kind of put the pieces together. He's like, okay, so he's not in an IT program. He's taken a couple classes, it sounds like. So what has he done? And then that's when he asked him about the solar energy certificate and if that showed up on the transcript, to which Omar said there weren't any certificates on his transcripts. So then he's realizing, oh my God, he hasn't done any school virtually. He's failed out of his classes and he's been lying to us. Bart then asked if any internships showed up on his transcript, to which Omar said there weren't any. Bart then asked if those internships, if they show up on the transcript, if they were obtained through MATC, just like Chandler had told them how he had got that internship position at American Family Insurance. And obviously, that wasn't the case either. Finally, Bart asked Omar if anyone by the name of Daniel Spieth or Alyssa Brandt still worked for the school, to which Omar said this. So this is actually a snippet of the phone call between Bart and Omar Jobe that actually got played at the trial. But listen to this.
Do you have an Alyssa Brandt that worked in that area or anywhere in the campus?
What is the last name?
Bran. I think it's T or DT.
You said the first name is Alyssa?
Alyssa? Yeah, Alyssa.
No. All the branch. There's no Alyssa with all the last name that I put.
And does that check non-teachers and everything? It would be anybody on campus?
It will be anybody on campus. The directory will have anybody on campus.
Okay. How about, does Daniel Spieth still work there? His last name is Spieth. Yeah, it's I'm trying to think the proper spelling. Speith.
You said SPEITH. No, it's not solo.
Okay, that should have done. Okay.
You can just hear it in Bart's voice.
Yeah.
He's like, oh no.
Yep.
You can just hear the disappointment and the realization that my son's been lying to me. And I'm sure he's starting to think, like, what the hell else has he been lying about? And I think that's starting to set in for him. The holiday season is just around the corner, and we're all looking for ways to spend and stress less. HelloFresh makes mealtime nearly hassle-free with delicious, home-delivered, chef-crafted recipes that come together quick and are less expensive than takeout. I'm a big fan of HelloFresh. I actually cooked a HelloFresh meal last night for my family. It was the rigatoni sausage pasta. It was absolutely delicious, very easy to put together, and it just takes the thinking out of making meals. And it also saves me a ton of money. Delivery fees and those apps just charge way too much to get food to the front door. Plus, this ends up being healthier. It's easier to clean up. Honestly, I've yet to have a bad HelloFresh meal. I love all the recipes. You can choose everything from the app, and you can choose and plan out weeks in advance. So it's kind of a set it and forget it type of deal. It's completely customizable. You can add proteins to whatever meals you want. There's sides, there's desserts, there's breakfast. I mean, they've got you covered from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and you can have flavorful, delicious meals on the table for your family within 30 minutes or less, which has been amazing for my family. So right now we got a special offer for you. You can get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/freemilehire, applied across 7 boxes, new subscribers only, and varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/freemilehire. After the call, Bart actually texted Chandler saying, quote, "I spoke to Omar Jobe," and that's like all he texted him. And you can imagine Chandler probably shit his pants and was like, oh no, he knows. He knows that I've been lying about basically everything. After the phone call with Omar, which again, this was on June 30th, What happened between Chandler and Bart is unclear, but what we do know is that Bart did go ahead and schedule a meeting with enrollment officers at MATC for the afternoon of July 1st, 2021, which is the following day, that's where we pick up with Krista now. So Krista had gone to work on July 1st as usual at Zimbrick Automotive and wasn't expected to be home until after 5 p.m. At 7:26 a.m., Chandler texted Cat that he hadn't slept, which probably because he's been up all night thinking about, what am I going to do? My whole world and all my lies are going to come to an end because now my dad knows what's up. The two hadn't seen one another since Bart's call with Omar, and Chandler had told her that he was grounded, though he didn't give the reasoning. A minute later, Chandler texted Cat, quote, I don't know, stuff hasn't really been going well for me lately, so I'm trying to plan for the next thing to fuck me over. Then at 7:51 a.m., he said, quote, yeah, I just had a great future planned and it's falling apart. Cat assumed that he was just talking about the SpaceX job after his injury. So he just worried that maybe the injury is going to keep him from being able to take that job. Later in the afternoon, Cat asked if they were still planning on going up to the cabin up north for the 4th of July, to which he replied that Bart and Krista might go up with a friend on July 2nd. Chandler and Cat later FaceTimed while he was in the shower, and he told her that they could hang out the next day as his parents would go up to the cabin early in the morning with friends he had never met. Very odd. Earlier in the day, Krista texted Chandler and asked how he was doing, and Chandler responded that he was doing well, and she responded with a smiley face. Then he texted his mom saying Bart's phone had died and asked if she could pick up soda on her way home, and Krista responded with, quote, "Kay, I can," smiley face.
Which at this point, I just feel like that shows that, you know, even though he's starting to be caught in some pretty big lies and his parents are probably like, what the heck is going on? It seems as though they were still, you know, very much so trying to keep a good relationship with him and weren't like, you know, what the hell is wrong with you? Get out of here. I never want to see you again. Nothing like that. And so, you know, the events that follow this are just so tragic and mind-boggling because
so extreme.
It seems as though they still, you know, loved their son,
Right.
wanted to figure it out, probably were trying to help him, you know, find a solution to this and, you know, be able to move on with their lives.
Right. I mean, like, literally, I feel like if my parents were to find out that I had been lying about not going to school for years, living with them, leeching off of them, I feel like they probably would have been like, all right, you're gone. Get out the house.
Get out.
And so the fact that Bart's initial response is like, we're going to go to the school tomorrow. We're going to pay off $2,000 and then get you enrolled in classes. Like, it shows that they're really invested in their son's future. And Krista is still just saying like, yeah, of course I'll get you soda, honey. Like, as if nothing really has changed. They just want to help him.
I wonder if, you know, the fact that he says I'm grounded to Cat, I wonder if that was legit, if he actually did get grounded, which that would be totally understandable.
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be like, that's a pretty chill punishment.
Yeah.
I'm just grounded. I can't leave my house, you know, could be made up, you know.
I think it could be made up because, even though, again, totally reasonable, but Chandler definitely was trying to, throughout, kind of sway Cat's opinion on his parents, because Cat loved Bart and Krista, and he would always kind of pepper in these things like, oh, my parents never let me have fun, blah, 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 blah. And she's just like, what are you talking about? Like, your parents are awesome.
Yeah.
So I think that is more or less like another attempt at that, being like, look at this, I'm an adult man and they're grounding me.
Yeah.
And of course he doesn't tell her why.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it seems like, you know, overall, I mean, I assume that Bart and Krista spoke, you know, on the night of the 30th. And so she knew that he had been lying about that. And even then, she's still texting him like, yeah, no problem. I get you soda. You know, I assume maybe not. Maybe Bart was keeping it to himself till he went in and kind of dealt with the situation. So maybe there's a chance Krista didn't know. But I would assume she probably knew a little bit.
Right.
And so, you know, seems like his parents are very forgiving and they obviously just want what's best for their son. And, you know, he continues to fuck up and they're still there for him, which says a lot about them. Then on the evening of July 1st, Chandler wrote a to-do list on his phone that included buying hydrogen peroxide, lemon, and reminders to, quote, clean the floor and, quote, get a job. The following day, July 2nd, Chandler is seen pulling out of his driveway early on a neighbor's security camera. He was then seen entering a Quick Trip gas station and buying multiple bags of ice. It's also clear in the screenshot from the gas station that he's not wearing his neck brace. So all of a sudden, these serious ailments that he supposedly had, he didn't feel like he needed his neck brace
And
that
also,
day.
he's carrying heavy bags of ice. Those things weigh a lot.
Exactly.
And if you're on the brink of becoming paralyzed,
You're
probably
not
don't want
doing
to do any of that.
No, exactly. He also texted Kat and asked her to bring her Swiffer wet jet and cleaning supplies. And he said he had been playing with the dog in the basement and throwing the ball at the fireplace. And he actually has two versions of this story. And in one, the dog ran into the glass front on the fireplace and shattered one of the panes. In the other version, it was the tennis ball that broke it. Which, why would you even be throwing a ball at glass anyway? Like, especially in front of a fireplace. Like, according to Chandler, he accidentally cut his foot on the broken glass after the dog or the ball broke it. And there was blood everywhere as a result of this injury. He also asked Kat to bring food for dinner since his parents had left with those unknown friends of theirs to go to the cabin that morning. So Kat purchased groceries using the Target app, which means that she received a bag from Target with her name and a list of items. And Kat had often picked up groceries for Chandler this way, so he had multiple Target bags with Kat's name on them. Before Kat arrived, Krista's coworkers at Zimbrick Automotive were worried. She had a scheduled shift that day, and Krista had only missed one shift before without calling in. Her friend and coworker Daniel Kroniger left the job and even drove to the Halderson house to check on her because he's like, this is very weird for her to no call, no show. And he also knew that she had a doctor's appointment coming up that she wouldn't want to miss. So Daniel goes over to the Haldersons' house and rings the doorbell multiple times, but no one answers. He can only hear the dogs barking on the other side. Then just before Daniel entered the home from the side entrance, Chandler came out wearing a towel. And Chandler explained the same story that he had told Kat. He said that his parents, Bart and Krista, had decided to go to their family's cabin on a last-minute trip with some friends that he didn't know. Chandler told Daniel that none of his texts were going through to his mom and that the cell towers up north must be too crowded and, there's clouds covering and they don't have great service there. Just a bunch of excuses for why he can't get a hold of him. So Kat picked up the groceries and then headed over to the Haldersons' house where she was seen pulling in on the neighbor's security camera footage. And they spent the day cleaning up the glass and blood in the basement. And Chandler made burgers on the grill and accidentally burned his hand. The two slept on a couch bed in the basement, and Kat left early on July 3rd to return to her mom's house. But Chandler also left early too, going to a hardware store first to purchase a tarp before he returned home and left again soon after. Then at around 7:30 a.m., Kat sent Chandler a Snapchat photo of her and her dog. Chandler opened the photo but didn't respond, which confused. Kat checked the snap maps to see Chandler's location, and the location Kat was actually familiar with. It was right where Chandler would take people swimming on the Wisconsin River. And this wouldn't be the only place Chandler visited that day. He went to the dump and multiple other locations near bodies of water in a 25-mile radius around Madison. And when Chandler saw Kat that day, he explained that he had to, just go haul some junk from the house to the dump, which he said he often did for his parents. And he had to drive around to find some alternatives as the dump he usually went to was closed for July 4th. Kat was getting worried as none of Chandler's texts to his mother were going through and she hadn't contacted him, which was very strange because Krista would contact her kids on a daily basis. So definitely a little weird. Luckily on July 4th, Chandler received a text from Krista saying that they had made it to the cabin safely and planned to go to the White Lake Parade later that day. In the afternoon, Chandler and Kat drove together to spend the day with her mother, Dulce, and her partner Cress at Cress's farm in Cottage Grove. Chandler took a particular interest in Cress's above-ground pool, telling her about his issues after his head injury and fears that the job with SpaceX was now off of the table. He then asked her if he could come back to the property alone to swim in their above-ground pool, as he said that this was like the perfect pool for doing physical therapy. Which, just to put this into perspective for you, this is a rural farm, and it's just a circular above-ground pool in the middle of like a pasture, okay? And, you have to, there's a kind of a walk to get to it. But this was like Cress's and Dulce's private pool. Cress would swim in it topless, it was like, it was in a kind of a private location, so she could do that. They have some acreage around them. So it was very weird. Of all the places for him to go do physical therapy, he was going to come back over to Cress's farm to use her pool. Kind of weird. And even Cress was like, yeah, that was a little odd, but okay. So next to the pool was a large barn, and people would park on the side of the barn closer to the pool, as the other side was a scrap pile and brush that led into a wooded area. So that night, Cat went home to her apartment, and Chandler finished the 4th of July festivities with his neighbors. He actually went with Daniel, I believed, to go watch fireworks with him. And Daniel's like asking him questions about like, hey, I haven't heard from your parents. It's kind of weird. He's like, oh, no, they're enjoying the 4th with some friends. And he's like, what friends? Like, oh, I don't know. Never met them before. So Daniel's also, probably getting a little suspicious. But again, he's not suspecting that Chandler has anything to do with anything at this point in time. So the next day, July 5th, Chandler drove to Cress's farm alone and asked Cress and Dulce if he could use a pool. Cress agreed, but she noted that he was acting very strange, and she wondered if he was on drugs. After about an hour and a half, Cress was getting frustrated because she had worked all morning. She's operating her farm, and just wanted to go and relax in her pool. And like I said, she usually swam topless. She didn't want to go get in the pool with Chandler because she liked to enjoy it her way. Eventually, Cress and Dulce drove to the pool because they were like, fuck it, we'll just kick Chandler out if he's in there. But when they got there, Chandler was nowhere that could be seen. But they noticed that his car was parked on the other side of the barn near the scrap pile. So the barn doors were open and he was on the other side, so they could see through it. The pool's on the opposite side of where his car's parked, but they could see through the barn and see his car parked there. And they're like, this is very weird. Why is he kind of like parked, kind of hiding behind the barn next to the woods, and he's not in the pool? So what is he doing here, right? So they were confused, but they're like, I don't know. Let's just go get in the pool. After a few minutes of hanging out in the pool, they see Chandler come walking out of the wood line, and he was noticeably dirty. And of course, they were like, Chandler, don't come any closer. Like, I'm topless. I'm swimming in my pool. And Chandler either didn't care or didn't hear them because he stripped to his boxers and then got in the pool anyway and appeared to be like washing himself off before he got out and then drove home. So he like literally gets in. They're like, no. She's topless there. So it's a very awkward situation already, but he's like clearly out of it. They're suspecting maybe he's on drugs or something, but he gets in and he's clearly, and this is a quote from them, wash himself off. So he's like going like this down his arms, like he's trying to wash something off of him, like almost like showering in their pool, which was very odd.
Which, by the way, this is his girlfriend's mother's partner's pool.
Totally
So
bizarre. Yeah. And I think their first thought is like, must just be high or on drug, he's off. Something's up with him because this is very bizarre and he's not listening to us. He just gets in and gets out and leaves. Then on July 6th, Cat told Chandler she was worried about his parents and he hadn't heard from them since the 4th, and Krista had a doctor's appointment that day that she had scheduled months ago. Chandler told Cat that if he hadn't heard from them by the end of the day, that he would go to the police with her the next day and report them missing. And that's exactly what happened. On July 7th at 11:35 a.m., Chandler and Cat went over to the Dane County Northeast Precinct to report Bart and Krista missing. They gave their initial statements to the police and then immediately began canvassing the area. And obviously, Chandler reached out to Mitchell, and Mitchell found out that his parents were missing. So Mitchell came down and joined police in Langlade County to search the cabin, the family's cabin. But once they entered the cabin, it looked like, quote, nobody was home and that it hadn't been used for months, because they went in and they're like, this looked clean, pristine. They went into the shed even where the kayaks or the canoe was and all the lawn chairs. And it was very obvious to the police that there was no activity there.
Well, especially since like they, according to Chandler, went up there with another couple.
Right.
So there's at least 2 bedrooms that would have been used, and just nothing, absolutely nothing.
Right. So that right there is already raising suspicion a little bit, or, making them feel even more uneasy about who is this couple that they went with and what happened to them. Because now they're like, did they go out on the boat somewhere? Was there a, car accident or something? Like, this just doesn't make any sense. When Chandler returned home after visiting the police precinct, he gave this interview to the local news, because now the news is on it. There's a couple missing, which for Madison, Wisconsin, very, very odd, and really just odd in general. It's not very often that a couple goes missing together, right? And I think the detectives who were working this case even said, they're like, we've never had a couple go missing like this. So it's very odd. So a reporter with the local news there went over to the Haldersons' house to just try to, get a statement from Chandler or talk to him. And so he goes over there and he's like, hey, would you mind doing a quick interview with me? And Chandler's like, yeah, but only if I'm not on camera. He's like, you can record my audio, but you can't record my face or anything. Which, what do you make of that? Why do you think he did that?
I think part of it, and we'll see later on, I think part of it is because Chandler comes across as very emotionless, especially in his face. And judging from, where this case is going to go, I think at this point, he really doesn't want people to see that in him. He doesn't want people to see the fact that, like,
seems kind of nonchalant about it. He's not like in tears or like seems like somebody who's scared that something might have happened to his parents, which again, this is Chandler thinking that he's, smarter than everybody else. And, he's manipulating the situation. But I think we have a little bit of that interview that we'll play for you now.
For a Windsor couple who have not been seen in days, 50-year-old Bart Halderson and his wife, 53-year-old Krista, were supposed to travel north last week and return home on Tuesday.
But their son tells Tony Galley his parents' whereabouts are unknown.
Bart and Krista Halderson of Windsor had plans for the 4th.
Their plans were going up with their friends and do some minor repairs on our cabin.
That cabin is some 3 hours away from Windsor on a lake in a small community in Langlade County.
Did you literally see them pulling out of the driveway heading out?
No.
Their son, Chandler Halderson, who asked to be off camera, says whoever his parents were traveling with from this neighborhood were to do the driving. He says he received a text from his mother.
She got back to me on Sunday, said they made it safely.
That's the last he's heard from his parents.
While sheriff's personnel here in
detective door-to-door
personnel checking missing couple's son says law enforcement in Langlade County has checked on the family's cabin there, and he says that visit only adds to the mystery.
The sheriff said it looked like there wasn't anyone home.
Family and friends hope the Haldersons' unexpected extended time away is just that, and not a sign they're in trouble. In Windsor, Tony Galley, 27 News.
So based off that news report, you can kind of see, based on Chandler's commentary there, that he's kind of setting up this mystery, right? He's like, well, I got a text from my mom and they said they made it safely. And again, they went with these neighbors who did the driving, which is why both of his parents' vehicles were still in the garage, which everybody thought was kind of odd. I think people that knew Krista and Bart were kind of suspicious of the story because like they would have told somebody who they were going with, right? It wouldn't just be this mystery couple that they just decided to go spend the 4th of July with. And again, the original story is that they were going up to the cabin to do some repairs, but yet law enforcement goes up there and they're like, there's no evidence that anybody was there. So kind of, the mystery's growing and it's like, well, what happened then? Did something happen to both couples and they were possibly taken by somebody? Did they just get lost and maybe, but then again, Chandler's like, well, I got a text from my mom. So law enforcement, they're looking at all this and like, something's not adding up here, right? They're like, this just doesn't make sense. So they're starting to look into it further. Because it's just like either they're fine and they're just out there. Maybe they don't have great service, so they can't get in touch with people like they usually do. And Chandler doesn't seem that worried about it either. He doesn't seem like he's fretting at this point. He's like, well, they do this, so, they're probably fine. And Chandler, the next things that he did was just spent the night playing Tarkov and then went to sleep. He's like, they're probably fine. I heard back from my mom. I'm just going to play video games. The following morning, which is now July 8th, Chandler was watching Escape from Tarkov YouTube videos before he decided to make these series of Google searches. And so in the internet searches, which we now know what these are thanks to the police because they extracted them from his computer, he searched for, at 9:44 a.m., body found Wisconsin. Then a few seconds later, woman's body found in Wisconsin. Then Wisconsin dismembered body found. Then dead body found in Wisconsin. Then body found in Milwaukee River 2021. Then it looks like a few hours later, he went and searched where the messenger hide the item Tarkov, which is some type of quest, I believe.
Yeah, it's a quest.
In the game that is a highly searched term. So it's interesting that he's searching for these terms after watching Escape from Tarkov videos. And then he's searching about dead bodies, and then he goes back to the game. All very, very odd. Bart's brother, Brett Halderson, then urged Chandler to ask around the neighborhood to see if anyone captured footage of the Halderson house on their security cameras. Because I think the Halderson family members are like, okay, something's up with this couple. They're clearly involved in their disappearance. So we need to figure out what this car was that actually picked them up from their house. Brett was worried as the last time that he spoke to Bart was on July 1st when Bart texted Brett to wish him a happy birthday. But Chandler, he starts doing exactly that. He goes around to the neighbors' houses. He's captured on neighbors' doorbells, and he starts asking neighbors if they can see his house and for him to take a look at the footage. And so we actually have some of the footage that you can look at of Chandler on the Ring doorbell. We'll show you that.
Hi, my name is Chandler Halderson. I live just down the road.
Oh, yeah.
You're the one of the police.
Yeah.
I was told you it's a fancy security system. I was wondering if you were able to capture the road or my...
The police actually came and downloaded everything they have. But it's actually my sister's house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they were here, I think, till like 9 o'clock last night and downloaded all the video she's got. So we're hoping that...
Yeah, did they capture anything on...
We don't know. They just took a copy of everything, and so we're hoping...
Wide angle
Yeah, and it's all...
Yeah,
and it's all HD, and then I think there's one...
especially in the dark. It looks like it has a little bit of night vision.
Yeah, and there's one on the corner of the garage, too. I don't know if that was typo, is that direct one, but... Yeah, so hopefully, you gave them everything that we had, so we're hoping we find something on it. Something I know we do. Yeah. I think,
But that's a pretty interesting interaction.
You notice how she's in the middle of speaking and he immediately turns and starts to figure out okay, what's the angle? Oh, it's a wide angle lens. Okay.
Oh, it has night vision on there. Because in his head, he's like, is this going to potentially capture me? Capture what I've been up to the last couple of days, right?
And when we've been referring to throughout the script, seen on a neighbor's security camera footage, pulling out whenever he or Cat left the home, it's this neighbor's security camera that was capturing them.
Yeah. Which I think this case is a great example of how useful having security cameras on your house can be to solving crimes,
right?
Just in your neighborhood. And yeah, recommend everybody these days needs security cameras. It's definitely can help out in a lot of different situations, and it definitely did in this case, that's for sure. Attention, parents and grandparents. Are you searching for the perfect gift for your kids this holiday season? Well, give the gift of adventure that will last all year long. A Guardian bike is the easiest, safest, and quickest bikes for kids to learn on. Kids are learning to ride in just one day and no training wheels needed. I love Guardian bikes, and they were nice enough to send a bike for my daughter. You know, she just turned 2 this past August, and she's been very into bikes, really. And so they had the perfect bike to get her started on. It's called the Guardian Balance Bike. But what's great about the Guardian Balance Bike is it allows them to keep their feet on the ground and kind of push themselves around. The next bike goes up to a 14-inch, 16-inch, and then it goes all the way up to a 26-inch. So they have bikes for kids from ages 1.5 all the way up to 14 years old. Their bikes are super lightweight. They ship right to your door. They're easy to assemble. I think it was like 2 screws I had to put in to kind of put it together. They also have an award-winning Sure Stop brake system, so your kids aren't flipping over the handlebars when they're learning to ride. And it really is a great way to build confidence at a young age when it comes to riding bikes. Some kids are terrified of riding bikes. Plus, they're assembled in the US of A, which we love. So join the hundreds of thousands of happy families by getting a Guardian bike today. Their holiday sales have begun, offering the biggest deal of the year. Save up to 25% on bikes, no code needed. Plus, get free shipping and a free bike lock and pump with your first purchase after signing up for their newsletter. Visit guardianbikes.com to take advantage of these deals and secure your holiday gifts today. Happy riding! It also is like, as soon as she's like, oh yeah, the police were here last night till 9 downloading everything. It's kind of hard to see, but he definitely, his whole demeanor changes. And he's like, oh, okay, great. You know what I mean? He doesn't seem like that thrilled about the whole situation whatsoever. And I'd be curious to talk to that neighbor and be like, what do you think of his gut reaction to everything you were telling him? Well, the police got the footage, they started reviewing it, and they went and searched Cress's farm property unbeknownst to Chandler. So Chandler is like obviously thinking through everything that's going on right now. He's worried about what the police are going to find out. But the police are already like 10 steps ahead of him. They're already like figuring out what happened here. So that evening, Chandler and Cat were at his home when police came by and entered, and they asked him to come down to the station to give a new set of statements. Chandler and Cat were put into 2 different squad cars, and Chandler noticed that police entered the house after they were driven away. So we actually have some footage from the squad cars' dash cams of them being driven to the police station. So we'll show you some of that, and then we'll be getting into some of the interrogation footage here in a minute. And we were able to find all of this on YouTube. Actually, there was a channel called Rottweiler Investigations. I think maybe FOIA'd the footage. It looks like, but yeah, it's all very interesting. But let me tell you what statements they gave once they got down to the station. So Kat, she gave her statement, and it was unchanged from the previous day. And although this time she remembered she had taken a screenshot of Snapchat maps when Chandler was down by the swimming spot. This was important as a witness had come forward to say that she had seen a strange man in that area the same day Kat took the screenshot. So put 2 and 2 together, right? Chandler's statement lasted over an hour and a half, and in it he told the story we have laid out here from the very beginning. And when asked if they would find either Bart's or Krista's blood in the house, Chandler said that his dad would scratch his legs until they were covered in blood. Because he said his dad had psoriasis, right? And so he would scratch his psoriasis to the point that he would be bleeding all over the place, which doesn't sound very believable to me. And his mom would get routine, quote, gushing bloody noses. So kind of setting up, well, if you do find a bunch of blood, their blood in the house, it's because of these conditions they have. He also recounted the day he visited Cress's farm and said he was on the other side of the barn because he was having a nervous breakdown. Great excuse. According to him, after Cress and Dulce noticed him, he decided to play into it, strip down, and then jump into the pool. And then after Chandler finished his statement, this is what happened.
Okay.
like all the background, I think, right? Yeah, I think so. So I think it's time we start talking about what happened to your parents, like in a truthful version. In front. Okay. And so we have like 20 pages of writing, and I start with a clean white piece of paper for you to start telling the truth. Okay. Why? Because listen to me. This is the only chance you're going to have to tell us the truth. Okay. Listen. I can't tell you what we know, but we know you're not telling us the truth. We know your parents are no longer with us. Okay. And we know the reason why. Okay. You need to tell the truth. Listen. You need to tell the truth about what happened and just tell us why it happened. Okay. If something happened, if you were defending yourself or if you just fed up with stuff, you need to tell us the truth. Okay. This is your chance to tell us why. Okay. I'm not BSing you. Okay. So can we do that? Okay. Okay. Lawyer. I'm sorry. Say it again, lawyer. Done. Because they're okay. You want a lawyer? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Don't arrest. What happened? Okay. You know what happened. We're not going to tell you what happened. You know what happened. You were there when it happened. We're not BSing you, okay? I wasn't there when it happened. Okay. We know more than you think we know. There's people that have told us things. We have evidence, we have proof. More is happening over that. So your parents never made it to the cabin, and I think you know that. Okay. So you're asking for an attorney. We're not going to ask any more questions. So I miss him. Let's say the parents going to drop this over here for me. Shouldn't in your pockets at all. Wallet. So I'll have to do for that. Oh. They will get me down in jail. Where's the flyer? Where's your coin cursor? You took it. Oh, that's a vape. Look, it's in. Oh, I got it there. Hey, what a drink more. You stay on the sequel.
Well, I think it's pretty telling from that clip right there.
That is some of the weirdest interrogation footage I feel like I've seen in a while because he's so emotionless.
It's shocking.
Like he has nothing to say. He's just sitting there like looking at, you can just tell he's like, oh, fuck.
He's having an internal crisis, 1000%. And he's probably, and again, he's only thinking about himself, and he's only been thinking about himself this entire time, which tells you everything you need to know about him. And I like the police's approach with this. You know, they just were like, we're not going to sit here and play games with you, and you know, and at this point they already had, you know, I think the thing that you got to know is that they had already gone, you know, to Cress's farm. They had already basically figured out this case. Like this case is solved at this point. They've found enough evidence from the search warrant that they did, the evidence they collected at his house, to Cress's farm, which we'll get into specifically what was found, of course. But he still, I think at the beginning of this, he thought that if I just play dumb and like, yeah, I don't know what happened, you know?
Well, and like, I agree. I think because you can't really do this for a lot of interrogations unless you do have like an insane amount of evidence.
Right.
But the fact that they just let him drone on for an hour and a half about all the bullshit we've already told you. And he brings up like cooking dinner for them, I think on the 30th.
Yeah,
he says,
shrimp
like,
scampi.
Yeah, but we were out of
didn't have
shrimp, so I
yeah.
made them shrimpless scampi. Like, what the fuck are you saying, man?
He tries to give them this whole story because he thinks he's going to be able to convince them of his story. Because again, he's too dumb to know that they've already figured everything out.
Right.
They already found the evidence they needed to link him to this crime. And he just looks like such a dumb fuck sitting there, you know? And again, like the detective's goal, I think at this point is to get a confession. Right. They want him to just confess to what he did. And as soon as he's like, lawyer, you know, that's where the interview ends. Cause I think in his mind, he's like, well, now I'm fucked. They clearly know what happened, but I'm not going to give them any more, which as we'll find out later, it might have done him some good had he owned up to what he did and did give a confession or show any emotion about what he did to his parents. But no, he just soulless. I mean, there's like very little life in this guy whatsoever. So Chandler reportedly told the police after he was arrested that he wanted to give, quote, the full story, but couldn't because he invoked his right to a lawyer. And before he said that he, quote, didn't feel bad about what I did.
Trash.
So, I mean, God. And it only gets worse from here, especially when we uncover what actually happened to his parents. But in the clip that you just saw, they initially arrested him for providing false information in a report about a missing person. So that's what they initially were able to get him on to take him into custody. But the neighbor security footage of the Haldersons' driveway proved that no one had picked up Bart and Krista on the 2nd, and the only people who left the house after July 1st were Chandler and Cat. And the police also found something else. When investigators arrived at Cress's farm, they noticed turkey vultures circling the wooded area where Cress and Dulce had seen Chandler emerging from. So you've got vultures above, which we all know what that means, right? Investigators in that search were able to find one of Cat's target bags, which were filled with bloody rags, black gloves, and the tarp that Chandler was seen purchasing earlier in the week in the trash can out front. In a rusted oil drum in Cress's scrap pile, investigators found rope, pruning shears, bloody scissors, and a broken, bloodied handsaw. And in the woods where the turkey vultures were circling up above, police found a disembodied torso with 2 7.62 rounds in it, in the back of it. 2 days later, the torso would be identified as Bart Halderson. On July 14th, police searched where Cat had seen Chandler on the snap maps, and that's when they found Krista Halderson's legs. After police searched the Halderson residence, they were able to piece together what really happened. Police found shoes in the garage filled with tinfoil, and inside of the tinfoil were Bart and Krista Halderson's wallets and phones. And after they traced the text sent to Chandler from his mom's phone on July 4th, they were able to determine that the text pinged the cell tower closest to the Halderson residence, and neither phone had left the house since July 1st. They were also able to search the fireplace, which indeed did have a pane of glass that had been shattered. However, upon searching the burnt wood within the fireplace, police were able to find charred and more than 200 burned skull fragments in the fireplace, which is just very, very disturbing and very sad. While searching the Halderson house, they weren't able to find any actual blood stains. Forensic teams were able to determine that there had been a large amount of blood on the floor in the unfinished section of the basement through luminol testing. And it's very obvious that there was, at one point, before it had been cleaned up, large amounts of blood on the floor. Also, they noticed that the coolers or freezers in the basement had been emptied of the massive quantities of ice that Chandler had purchased throughout the week from the gas station. And they did swabs of those, I think towards the drain caps, because obviously they had all been drained and cleaned, it looked like. They came back positive for the DNA of Bart and Krista Halderson. So he literally put his parents' remains in one of those freezers at least. And in the walls of the unfinished basement, investigators were able to locate 3 loaded magazines for the SKS rifle. One of the magazines had several rounds missing, and they were able to find one shell casing on the basement floor that clearly he had forgotten about. In Chandler's room, they were able to locate the ammo can that his friend Andrew had given Chandler when he had gifted him that SKS rifle. Police located multiple burner phones in Chandler's desk, and when they traced those numbers, they led back to the various people that Bart had been in contact with throughout all of the conversations with MATC and American Family Insurance. And they could also trace the IP addresses of the emails Bart had been in contact with and learn that, of course, all of them had been created in the Halderson residence. So at this point, it was very obvious that Chandler had been orchestrating all of those communications when Bart thought he was talking to different people. Even Daniel Spieth or Spieth, that he had actually talked to on the phone, of course, it was Chandler on the other line. So he was literally pretending to be somebody else while talking to his father, which is just wild. So with all that in mind, we can piece together what happened. According to Chandler's transcripts, he completed one semester in 2018 and half a semester that summer. He had taken one solar energy course, but wasn't enrolled in any specific program, and he never obtained a solar energy certificate like he said. Then, starting in 2019, he began dropping and failing classes until around 2020, when he stopped enrolling in any courses. His internship with American Family Insurance was entirely made up. Every contact he supposedly spoke with was completely fabricated, and he had never even applied to work at SpaceX. He also lied to Cat about signing a lease in Florida for a place for them to live in, and he lied about purchasing a car down there so that they'd have, some way to get around once they moved down there. And then let's talk about this horrible injury that he sustained. Yep. It turns out he purposely fell down the stairs at his home and hit his head. But the initial ER visit was the truth. He sustained no lasting injuries. It was just a mild concussion. They even brought the ER doctor up on the stand during the trial, and he was like, nope, never diagnosed him with any of those things.
At any point during your time with Mr. Halderson, did you tell him that he had a brain bleed?
No, ma'am.
At any point during your appointment with Mr. Halderson, did you at any point tell him that he had a brain aneurysm?
No, ma'am.
At any point, did you tell him that he had nerve damage?
I don't believe so. No, ma'am.
At any point, did you tell him he had a spinal injury?
No, I don't believe so.
At any point, did you advise him that he should not fly in an airplane?
No, ma'am.
At any point, did you tell him that he should not drive?
I don't believe so, no.
At any point, did you ever say that he shouldn't drive long distances?
No, ma'am.
At any point, did you tell him that he had a hematoma in his brain?
No, ma'am, I did not.
At any point, did you tell him that he would have an inability to use his legs in a normal manner?
No, ma'am.
At any point, did you tell him because of his mild concussion that he was going to have a colostomy bag?
No, ma'am.
And just to be clear, that's a bag for poop.
That's correct.
At any point in time, did you have to drill a hole into his head?
No, ma'am.
At any point in time, did you tell him that he was going to have surgery where a hole would be drilled in his head?
No, ma'am.
And he struggles to not even smile because it's just so ridiculous. Hematoma, all of these things from a little fall down the stairs. The doctor Chandler claimed to have seen, who said he was at risk for paralysis, was going to be prone to chronic migraines, needing a colostomy bag, and was required to wear a neck brace, said that he never saw Chandler once after this injury. So did he even go to another doctor? No. Just lied about that as well. And his dive team volunteering. Nope. Completely made up. Neither the sheriff's department nor the Department of Natural Resources had a volunteer dive team, let alone Chandler was a part of that whatsoever. But what's strange about all of these lies is that Chandler went to extreme lengths to convince people in his life that they were all real, that they're all legitimate. I mean, going so far as what we said earlier, to make fake presentations for his American Family Insurance internship. He would write fake papers for his fake classes. He would literally go to the doctor's office and just sit in his car for an hour in case Cat checks Snapchat maps. So everything, and to go to that great length, for what?
I mean, it's like at this point,
What?
why aren't you just taking the classes?
Yeah.
Why aren't you just in school? Why, like,
Seems like you're working harder avoiding it, but
Right.
convincing people you're doing it than if you would actually just fucking do it.
and again, he's doing all of this solely so he can have time to play video games. Like that is the goal of all this. But still, you're doing so much added labor, spending so much money on burner phones, all this bullshit. Just go to school. It doesn't make any sense.
I think he's lazy piece of shit. He didn't want to pay bills. He didn't want to pay rent. He knew he's getting paid for, basically. And he's manipulating everybody in his life to continue this lifestyle. And I think he also probably felt like I'm in too deep at this point.
Yeah.
He got to a point where he was like, there's no turning back at this point. I'm committed to these lies. I've dug myself into this hole. And I'm sure part of it is a pride thing, an ego thing. He seems like a narcissist to me. And so I think he's just like, fuck it. You know, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm smarter than these people. I'll just keep manipulating them. But then I think once his dad figured out it was all a fucking lie, he was like, oh shit. You know, now nobody's going to look at me the same anymore. Everybody's going to know I'm full of shit. I'm not this great person, this, you know, high achieving person like my brother is. I'm a failure. I'm a disgrace, whatever. I mean, and that's not even considering the fact that his parents seem like amazing people and would have accepted him no matter what, and likely would have helped him out of any situation he would have ever got himself into. But in his head, I think it was almost like too much to bear in a way. But I still don't understand the reason to then resort to murdering your parents in cold blood and then proceeding to dismember them. To me, there's no ounce of me that understands that whatsoever. Why? Like, how do you go to that extreme?
Right.
This doesn't seem like a situation that would call for that. I've seen other cases where the son was stealing from his parents and like stealing thousands upon thousands of dollars from them, and they were about to find out about it, and then he killed them. And in that case, I was like, well, he knew he was going to go to prison regardless, so then he just, you know, he was like, well, I'll just take it to the next level and try to get away with it. But in this case, it's like, this really for a video game?
Right.
Just to play a stupid video game? Is that the power that these games have over people these days? It's like crazy.
I think like part of it is also that, I mean, the crux of all of Chandler's lies, it ends up being that he's the victim, right?
Yeah.
He always needs to play victim. With American Family Insurance, it's that, oh, they fucked up my payroll, so I'm not going to get paid. With SpaceX, it's like, oh, I got this injury, you need to feel bad for me. And so I think in order to cover up his parents' death, his murder of his parents, it's that they were kidnapped by a couple that he never knew. And so once again, oh, this is a way for people to feel bad about me, for people to pity me.
Totally.
Because he always needs saving. That's the kind of the thing.
But how dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, Chandler really is one of the dumbest criminals of all time.
Seriously.
To really think that this whole plan was going to work and pay off, and like somehow your parents would just disappear without a trace, and that you would just go on living your life playing Escape from Tarkov, you know, as a fugitive for the rest of your life. Like, it's so insane. It just doesn't, I just don't understand what clicked in his head where he's like, I need to kill them and get rid of them forever. Otherwise, what?
Right.
You can't play your little video game all the time? Like, I just don't get it. Like, what's the motive there? I don't know.
I kind of like, the one thing I can relate to Chandler with is like COVID, moving back with your parents and suddenly having a million years to just play video games. And you really do get settled into that lifestyle, and you kind of come to this point where you're like, I don't want a job. I just want my parents to take care of me forever and play video games. But as an adult, you're supposed to snap out of that. You're supposed to be like, okay, cut the shit. We need to do things. And I think he was just so terrified of losing that lifestyle that he would rather kill his parents than lose it, which is just insane.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that can possibly explain it. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it's also unclear still if Bart had actually even learned about all of the lies that Chandler was telling. Like, he obviously found out about, the school thing, right? He knew his son wasn't actually going to school or passing his classes. But, did he know about the SpaceX thing? Did he know about, all these other things he's lying about on a daily basis? As I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, I've been dealing with a cold, nasty cold last couple of days. It's that time of year. My daughter's been kind of sick, and I think I picked it up off of her. I guess it's just comes with having a child. You're always going to be sick. So I hopped on my favorite app, ZocDoc, in order to find a doctor to go and see. We love ZocDoc here. Kendall and I use it all the time. It's a free app and website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors, and then you can choose the right one for your needs and click to instantly book an appointment, which just makes it so easy. Gone are the days of having to go to the insurance website, locate a doctor through there. ZocDoc just makes it so much easier and simpler to find good quality care when you need it. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skincare, and so much more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, which is really helpful, who are located near your location, who are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients, because I think, we all like to check reviews on basically everything these days, and doctors are no different. We want to make sure we're going to a doctor who's going to actually listen to your needs and take care of the issue for you. You can also see their actual appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and then click to instantly book a visit. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments, which you can't get much better than that. We love ZocDoc, and we know you will too. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/milehigher to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/milehigher. Check it out today at ZocDoc.com/milehigher. So on July 1st, Chandler and Bart, again, were going to go to MATC to meet with counselors and pay off Chandler's balance and then get him enrolled in new classes. Instead, while Krista was at work, Chandler shot Bart at least 2 times in the back with that gifted SKS rifle. And then when Krista returned home, after his lovely mother just seemed like the best mom, who literally was like, I'll stop and get you a soda on my way home, she comes into the house and he shoots her as well. Probably in the back. And that, I don't know if we know exactly where Krista was shot, because her remains were scattered and torn apart, but just fucking coward. This guy is such a cowardly, low life. It's just to do this to such good people and your own parents. I have no sympathy whatsoever for him at all. I mean, it's just pure evil is what it is. So he shoots both of them, then proceeds to mutilate their bodies with crude gardening tools, which that whole, I don't want to go too much in detail. It's very gruesome, but it's hard to imagine him, like, the mind state to be at that point where you're literally, using gardening tools to mutilate your parents. Like, I just don't get it. It's disgusting. So he does that. He, keeps them in the freezer for days to keep them from decomposing. But then he has the bright idea of trying to incinerate their remains using the fireplace in his house. And this was actually something that became a big piece of evidence linking him to the crime, because again, there were security cameras on all the neighbors' houses. They're all watching his house, and a neighbor had a security camera that captured the Haldersons' basement window and had like a perfect view of it. And there's clearly a massive flame going in the basement, in that fireplace, burning from the evening of July 1st all the way until the early morning hours of July 2nd. And neighbors later said that they thought someone was barbecuing, which is just disgusting to think about. This sick motherfucker was in his house trying to cremate his parents in his basement fireplace. Again, dumb, so dumb, because he wasn't aware that you need an extremely hot fire in order to do that at all. And it's literally impossible to do it in a fireplace. And he tried to like pump oxygen into it to get the fire to burn hotter, but it actually caused the fire to get out of control. And you can actually see that from the security camera footage. And then he likely used water to put out the flame, but the temperature shock was too much for the glass fire shield. So that's why the glass exploded, because, you know, he's dumping water on it. And then he proceeded to step on it and cut his foot on it, because he did actually have a pretty decent cut in his foot, which is just so dumb. He then calls up Cat, has her come over the next day to help him clean up his parents' blood, which, again, I want to be very clear. Everybody who saw, you know, Cat was never charged with anything because it was very obvious that she had no idea what she was coming over to clean up. Because he was like, yeah, it's my foot, but it's obviously more than that. But then he would also use one of her Target bags to dispose of the bloody rags, the gloves, that would potentially implicate her in the murder. But again, there's no evidence to suggest that she was involved. And again, she was never charged with anything. And I think if you watch some of the clips, and maybe we'll play a little bit here of her taking the stand in the trial, it's very obvious she didn't know. She didn't know what was actually going on.
Let's start with Bart. Did you have a relationship, or how did you know Bart Halderson?
I knew Mr. Halderson through Chandler. I would be at their home quite often, and he would show me fishing tips, or if I was cooking, him and Mrs. Halderson would be in the kitchen, and we would have game nights quite often. And we would also play Mario Kart together a lot.
Okay. There's some Kleenex there for you if you need it.
I have a handkerchief.
Go ahead and take a moment. What about Krista? Could you tell me about your relationship with Krista Halderson?
Mrs. Halderson and I, we would text often about what we're doing in our lives and talk about the dogs and Chandler, and like we would talk about recipes and food we want to try, and if I was cooking them something from my culture, she would always be excited, and we talk about it and always talk about game nights and wanting to do a girls' trip to Disneyland together with her, I, and Caitlin.
Okay. And it is furthest thought from her mind. You know, this is not the Chandler that she knew. And yet he was just lying to her completely. But after all this goes down, you know, they're finished cleaning up the blood off the floor. Chandler's like, yeah, let's cook up some burgers and just have a normal night. Like, what?
At the house.
At the house. Yeah, they're still at the house.
Well, and like that FaceTime screenshot that we saw earlier when Chandler's in the shower, that was likely taken only a few hours after he's
washing the blood off of him, because you can only imagine how messy that would have been. It's just like, can't even make this shit up. It's just insane. And so he makes burgers for dinner, burns himself on the grill so that he can explain the burn he had received the previous night from the out of control fire he's got going. And then he spent the next 3 days scattering his parents' remains across Wisconsin, all over the county, just dumping different parts everywhere. Chris's legs and Bart's torso were the only remains that were located by police. We still don't know where the rest are. And my guess is he just put them in random spots in the river and wherever else. But still, after piecing together Chandler's story, the police were not able to find that SKS rifle, the murder weapon that had been used to kill his parents. Then months after Chandler's arrest, Cress was in the same barn that Chandler had parked at when he went and hid Bart's remains in the woods. And that's when she found the SKS rifle just sitting underneath some pile of junk
This
in the
guy is
barn.
a complete moron.
Just left it
What?
out.
You're gonna put it there?
Yeah.
Why would you not put it, I don't know, anywhere else?
Well, I think it's, to Ian's point earlier, he's doing everything he possibly can to put the blame on somebody else.
Right.
And so in his mind, I think the whole reason he went there and dumped the remains there is like, oh, I'll pin it on Cress.
Yeah, but
Or don't, which is like dumb because it's like, clearly there's no link there. Why on earth would they ever do this to your parents?
Yep. But if you're gonna do that, maybe you should not come out of the woods and
Yeah,
jump in
why
the
are you?
pool.
Yeah, what are you?
Because then they're obviously going to go to the police and be like, yeah, it was so weird. He was in the fucking woods and then jumped in our pool when we were like, hey, we're not fully clothed. Please don't come in here. And he goes into what? Wash himself off? Like, so stupid.
Dumb. He's such a dumbass.
Well, and even during his interrogation, he makes a point to say that Cress's 95-year-old father is a really good shot.
Right. He even brings him into this.
Mm-hmm.
As if this random guy.
And again, he never says like directly, like, how do you know he didn't shoot them? But it's like the fact that he even brings that point up when it's completely irrelevant to anything just shows this guy's such a piece of shit, man.
Yeah.
Just an utter piece of shit. Has no regard for anybody else except for himself at the end of the day.
We were talking about this before we started recording, how it's one thing, obviously, to shoot your parents or to kill them, but then to go and dismember them
Yes.
is, I don't know
It's a
how you
whole other
mentally
level.
talk yourself through that process. That is just on a whole other level of demented. I don't even know how else to describe it.
Yeah, you have to put yourself in a totally different mind state to do something that evil and disgusting. And I mean, it's not no easy task too. I mean, human bone is extremely difficult to saw, and he's using hand tools.
He broke through multiple handsaws trying to do it.
Yeah.
And
so devastating.
I mean, we mentioned before, but like he had removed Bart's shirt, but Bart's like pants and underwear were still on him. And
yeah, he cut his legs right below them.
Right. So there's clearly some line that he wasn't willing to cross, and that line was nudity, which is just so fucking insane.
I don't think that really even matters. I mean, I think he literally decapitated his father.
Right.
Like, there is no. He's sick. There's something very deeply wrong with Chandler, and you want to talk about somebody who's pure evil. I think Chandler is pure evil. There's no other way to understand it. There's no, I don't know. And part of me thinks that like maybe the head trauma thing was going to be part of his defense later on in some way, shape, or form if he ended up getting caught. Like maybe that was I don't know. And it also begs to the question of like, how long did he think about this? Like, what was that moment that he was like, the only way I get out of this is if I murder them and make it seem like they disappeared and they're just out of my life forever. Like, what is there's no logical thinking here whatsoever. I'm just like, how did we get to this point? And here's a guy who, by all accounts from his friends and people that grew up with him, would have never guessed, even his own aunts, uncles, family members are like, this is so far from anything we could have ever imagined happening that we are completely in shock by this. Like, it just makes no sense whatsoever what drove him to this point that he was willing to do this to his own parents. It's still a mystery. I think it's still kind of the question, because he's never talked about it. He's never came out and said why, or, told anybody why he did what he did. In fact, he thinks he's innocent. He thinks he's been wrongfully charged and is appealing his sentence. But let's get into the trial here, because I think the trial is also very telling. So the trial against Chandler Halderson kicked off in January of 2021. He faced 8 counts, 4 counts each for Bart and Krista, including first-degree intentional homicide, false information on a missing persons report, mutilating a corpse, and hiding a corpse. And Chandler decided his best defense was to plead not guilty to all accounts. According to text messages exchanged between Chandler and Cat while he was awaiting trial, the two stayed together for a while. So, and a lot of people have given Cat a lot of grief for that. And, I think it's hard to put yourself in her shoes with all this because, again, she's kind of under his spell, right? And he's like, I didn't do this. There's no way I could have done this. And she also doesn't know all of the evidence and everything that came out in trial. Because in trial, this was a slam dunk case. They had everything they possibly needed to put Chandler away for this. But Chandler kept manipulating Cat, telling her that she could decorate the house when he got out, asked her for money while he was inside jail, and wouldn't stop talking about how much he worked out while in jail. This guy is an egotistical maniac.
Right.
Complete, like we keep saying, narcissist. However, Cat had agreed to be a witness for the prosecution, and it's likely that during witness preparation, she could recognize Chandler's lies for what they were and ended up breaking it off with him. And Chandler never testified during his trial, and his defense never called any witnesses because they didn't have any. Who's going to come vouch for Chandler at this point? But we wanted to show you a clip from Cat's cross-examination because I think it's helpful to understanding who Cat is.
You were brought down here by the police, right?
Yes.
Were you in the same car or different cars when they brought you down here?
I was in a...
You're doing okay.
I was in a different squad car than Chandler.
Okay. Did you go into an interview room with the police?
Yes, I did.
And did they ask you questions?
Yes.
Do you know about how long you were down here that night?
A couple hours.
Did you answer all of their questions?
Yes.
At that point, and I'm asking about what your mindset was at the time, did you believe that you or Chandler had done anything wrong at that point?
No.
Okay. Were you emotional during that interview?
Yes.
Okay. How do you express your emotions sometimes?
I cry a lot, or if I get too anxious or emotional, I start vomiting.
Those things were happening that night?
Yeah.
Police asked at times to look at your phone and photographs and things of that sort?
Pardon?
And did you show them anything they wanted to see?
Anything they wanted, yeah, I gave to them.
Why was it important to you to cooperate at that time?
Because I just believed his parents were missing. And I just want them to be found.
So you can tell us if you need a break or if you want to keep going. I'm almost done, but it's up to you.
Well, you can keep going.
Okay. Were there any of the police questions that you would not answer?
Not that I can recall.
And did the police contact you after that night to talk again?
Yes.
And did you fully cooperate and speak with them that time?
Yes.
And several times, law enforcement and other people have contacted you to speak about this. And have you cooperated all of those times?
Yes.
You've met with me personally a couple of times, correct?
Yes.
Have you always, in the course of this investigation, done your best to tell the absolute truth of what happened?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm almost done, and I have to ask. I'm gonna ask a couple questions, and I hope you appreciate why I'm asking them.
Also, during the trial, the prosecution spent a lot of time piecing together Chandler's web of lies and walked the jury through the massive amount of evidence against him. From start to finish, I think law enforcement and the prosecution just completely, did an upstanding job on this. Like they found every little piece of evidence. They got all of the digital evidence that they needed to put him at different locations, the Google searches, the forensic evidence. I mean, they also did a good job of explaining his lies and why he was lying and who he was lying to. So here's another clip from the trial. This is actually from the prosecution's opening statements. Yeah, the DA in this case, or the prosecutor in this case, is excellent.
Now, over the next couple of weeks, I'll make you a couple promises as your prosecutor in this case. I'm not here to waste your time. But of all the constitutional rights we talked about of Chandler, he has them. I want you to respect them. There's another one that you should know, which is this is the only time we get to have this trial. You get one trial in the United States of America, and I have to do it right. So if that means calling a lot of witnesses, I apologize in advance. If it means calling experts to say things that maybe you already know, I apologize in advance. But I'm going to do my job right as your prosecutor. Second, you're going to see terrible photographs. There were approximately 5,000 photographs taken in this case. You're going to see maybe total a couple hundred of actual body parts, maybe a couple dozen. We have scoured those photographs and tried to remove ones that are just horrible to see because of the conditions the bodies were in, because of insects and maggots and things of that sort, and instead are trying to only show you photographs that help you understand how the remains were hidden, where they were hidden, how they were dismembered. To the extent possible, we're using cleaner photographs that were taken by the Dane County Medical Examiner. I promise you, I'm not trying to pull on anyone's heartstrings. I'm not trying to make this overly emotional. You might feel emotional. I suspect many of you have never seen anything like what you're going to see in the next couple of weeks. But I promise to do my best to limit the amount. And lastly, I promise to just ask questions, a lot of questions, because you're the jury in this case, and you deserve to hear absolutely everything. It will be a struggle. You'll get sick of walking back and forth to these jury rooms. You might get sick of each other. I hope not. But it's an important task. What happened here shouldn't happen, but it did. And so in a couple weeks, when I stand up here and Miss Raymond stands up here, I'm going to ask you to deliver a verdict of guilty.
So the state ended up calling up witnesses from MATC, American Family Insurance, Chandler's doctor, Chandler's brother Mitchell, Chandler's friend Andrew, and Cat, along with the investigators who worked the case, because they debunked every single one of his lies by calling up some of these witnesses. And here's another clip of Dulce describing when Chandler came over to Cress's farm to use the pool. And this was likely the time that he went over there to hide Bart's remains and then proceeded to get in the pool.
What happened next? Did Chandler go away? Did he get in the pool? What happened?
He got in the pool.
Okay. What did Chandler do once he got in the pool?
He was just, he was looking, he was looking to the horizon.
Okay. And was he in the water?
Yes.
What was he doing in the water physically? Was he moving around? Was he swimming?
He was like going underwater and, putting on water on his body and,
So you're making those motions on your arm, and this is one of those weird things because we have to type down everything that's happening. How would you describe what he was doing when you put your hands on your arms?
Like he was, putting on water. When you put water and...
Okay. So staring off kind of through that field toward the horizon and
yes, because Chris is behind me and I put my body to kind of shield her, but Chandler was looking to the horizon. Okay. And then he turned around and then he was getting more underwater and, he was like underwater. Like.
Okay. Was he saying anything?
Not much. Okay. The water was nice and warm, but.
Did you or Cress ask Chandler where he had been?
Objection to the form of the question.
Sustained. You can rephrase.
Did Chandler tell you where he had been?
No, I thought he went for a walk. Because he wasn't in the car, he was walking. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. That's what I said to Chris.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. If you don't remember, that's okay. But when Chandler was walking toward the pool and right before he got in, did he still have all his clothes on or did he have some of his clothes off?
He had his shorts on.
and he didn't have his. I think his shirt was off. Okay. I think so.
So tell me if I'm remembering this correctly. So you see him coming from next to the barn. As you see him, he's wearing his shorts, but not his shirt. He gets in the pool. He stares off kind of toward the horizon, and he is splashing water onto himself. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Did he tell you anything at all about what he was going to do next or what his plans were that day?
Yes, he was going to my place because Catherine was making his favorite. And we asked what was his favorite. And he says McDonald's.
He said he's going to go get McDonald's.
McDonald's. And I said, Catherine is a lazy. She should not make McDonald's.
You thought your daughter would cook something better.
I'm like, yeah. I mean, they always cook good food in the house.
Sure. How long were you in the pool with Chandler? You and Cress and Chandler, how long did that last?
I don't know. Probably, I don't remember how long, but I mean, we were still, I think maybe 15 minutes, maybe.
Do you know how it ended? Did everyone get out at the same time, or did
No.
How did it end with Chandler at least being there?
Chandler, after Chandler, went and swim for a little bit. He didn't swim because he didn't even wet his hair. After he went and just splashed himself, then he get out of the pool and then I feel more comfortable, and so.
Chandler left at that point?
Yes. Well, he has to go back to pick up his car.
Sure. And did you see him after that, or did he leave at that point, after he got his car?
No, he just went, got his car, and then drove off, and we just waved him. We was very happy that he came, but which was strange because Catherine wasn't with him, but.
And again, Chandler's defense attorneys did not call a single witness and only cross-examined Andrew about how many weapons he had given and sold to other people. And that clip is good as well. So we'll play that for you.
Now, when you gifted this SKS to Mr. Halderson, you talked about this procedure you use with taking a photo of someone's driver's license with the serial number from the firearm. Do you remember that? That's not something you only have done with Mr. Halderson. It's something you've done anytime you've sold, transferred, or gifted firearms, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've done that several times?
Yes, ma'am.
How many?
Depends on a lot of things. I can have an AR-15 that I'll buy, and I'll build it, and then it'll sit in my safe for whatever reason for a long time, and then I can go like, oh, okay, well, go and sell it. But as for how many I've sold, that's none of your business, frankly.
Okay.
Andrew's interesting individual.
He definitely strikes me as a video gamer for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely got the whole gamer thing, and he's, yes sir, no sir. He's got the military sort of responses, and obviously has a lot of knowledge around firearms. Clearly.
Well, and what I really respect about Andrew is that, like, yes, he's giving guns away to people, which morally, I don't know how I feel about that. But he goes through great lengths to make sure that it's all documented and extremely legal.
So when he would do, because he was kind of operating as like a dealer, in a way, which it's not, you can sell and buy and sell firearms privately. There's no issues there, especially in Wisconsin or in Kansas or wherever they were doing the transaction. But he would take the firearm, make sure he gets a serial number, and take a picture of it along with the new owner's license, which was really smart because, especially in this case, because now here's a weapon that he once owned, now used in a homicide. And luckily for him, because he took those extra steps to really make sure that the possession of firearm is not in my possession anymore. It's now in Chandler's possession. He had the proof of that still. So it's very obvious. So Chandler couldn't be like, well, it's not my gun. It's Smitty or Andrew Smith's gun. So how do you know he didn't do it? You know what I mean? So Chandler had no way of being like, well, it's not my gun, because he literally had proof of the transaction. So yeah, he seemed to know what he was doing to some extent there, and ultimately saved him from the headache of being kind of wrapped up into it any further. After 10 days of trial, the jury deliberated for only 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all 8 accounts. That's amazing. I'm glad everybody unanimously was like, yeah, this guy fucking did this. There's no question whatsoever. And Chandler Halderson was sentenced to life in prison. And I'll let the judge tell you the rest, because I think the judge in this case really lays out perfectly, why he felt Chandler deserved the sentence that he got, and whether or not he deserved to get life without parole or life with possibility of parole, and really kind of drives home the impact of Chandler's actions in this case. I think he did a really good job. So I'll let him take it from here.
The jury found Mr. Halderson guilty of mutilating both bodies, hiding both bodies, and presenting a story to law enforcement to try and lead them on a completely different path than what had actually occurred. And that he took steps in those actions which really robbed those people of dignity. But fortunately, their dignity is whole here in these people that remember them, these people that are here today because of them. I appreciated learning more about them, and my condolences go to every member of their family. I cannot conceive of a way to fulfill my duty to protect the public that I serve were I to perceive that at some point in time, an individual who committed these crimes should be released back into that public. I cannot grant to Mr. Halderson the generosity of spirit and empathy that his grandmother has for him. Empathy which his own parents would surely have had, were he just owned up to what he had deceived them about. I cannot say to the community here in this room or at large in this county that Mr. Halderson should have the ability to be reviewed and considered for release back into our community at any point, despite his young age at this point in his life. The gravity of these offenses and the need to protect the public, I have to, for this sentence, ensure that the only time Mr. Halderson comes back into the community is to have the privilege of a burial that he denied his parents.
So where are we at now when it comes to Chandler Halderson? Well, 2 of Chandler's counts were vacated due to a conflicting legal matter that would have actually led to a new trial, but he is still currently serving his life sentence. And his attorney at the time in 2023 actually filed a no merit report. His attorney's name, Michael Covey, and he said, quote, "There was sufficient evidence for a jury to convict Halderson on all accounts," end of quote. And on April 1st, 2024, Chandler filed a response to his attorney asking for any representation to take up his case in an appeal. And it's just says so much about him that even at the end of his trial, right before the judge, he's like asking for appeal and representation. I mean, it's just no sorry, no apology, no nothing. He's more worried about himself and getting an appeal. The only person involved in this case who has made an appearance since Chandler's conviction was Andrew, who spoke to some creators and streamers who play Escape from Tarkov, because of course people want to talk to him and ask him, about this whole ordeal. But it seems like it was unfair to give updates on anyone else involved, as they seem to have distanced themselves from the case at this point. And Andrew Smith, is definitely not wanting to talk about this anymore. But Bart and Krista's remains were buried at Rose Lawn Memorial Park in Madison, Wisconsin, and their obituary states, quote, "Most importantly, they were devoted parents and loving husband and wife." I feel so bad for this family. It's just such a heartbreaking story, and I feel horrible for Mitchell. I mean, Mitchell has now lost his entire family. Both of his parents are gone. His brother's in prison for life, and I don't know if they have any sort of relationship at this point. I don't know how you could. I know I would struggle to ever want to speak to my brother again after this, but just a tragic case all the way around. And I don't even know how you begin to heal from something like this happening. It's just so shocking and traumatizing. You just never could have expected this. You never see this coming, and then boom, it happens, and you're like, what happened here?
Well, like, especially in a place like Madison, which is just, a lot of my family lives in Madison, and it really is just a quiet, really lovely town where people are very nice to each other all the time. And I don't know, to have something like that, like, yes, horrible things happen everywhere, but I think to have something like this happen to such devoted community members and parents, like, it's pretty shocking for everybody.
Yeah. I hope that they're doing, the Halderson family's doing well as best as they can, and trying to move on from this, and I hope that Chandler never sees the light of day ever again. He doesn't deserve to ever get out of prison. He needs to sit there and clearly think about what he did and maybe own up to what he did. Take some accountability for these actions. But it seems like he has no interest in that. He's just trying to find his way out of prison at this point, which I don't think he'll ever get out. I don't think there's just no way that an appeal is ever going to be successful. I think in this case, it's just so evil what he did, and just so blatantly disregarding of everyone else in his life, especially his parents, that I don't think he deserves to get out. But yeah, what a horrible case. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on this, or if you've heard this one before. Some people on the internet call it the escape from Tarkov murders, which is kind of interesting to me. But yeah, I don't even know what else to say. I'm just like blown away. It's just absolutely horrible case. Appreciate you for joining us for this episode of Mile Higher, and I'll see you next time.